in my way of thinking, the intellectual property, which is the domain of the university, and there's, for example, at Cornell, it is a warehouse of a large database of intellectual property exists because of the diversity of this university. But on the spectrum of things, if you look at that timeline that I just outlined, I see the intellectual property as about 2% of the overall activity of bringing commercializing and bringing a company to fruition where there's a return on the sweat equity, which is, by the way, how I value it in negotiations with patent offices, 2%, which is what I end up getting from MIT's or Cornell's, which is not, by the way, the world view from the universities, where they view it as anything from 10 to 50% of the activity. So they have a very different world view of that timeline than I do. I think the next challenge one faces, in addition to the misperception of what the intellectual property is worth or isn't worth in the overall time span, is there are no entrepreneurs. And that's the single biggest problem. If you're dealing with intellectual property, and frequently it is in the head of a professor, what you'll discover is that certainly he or she is the expert in this area, but they're not interested in leaving the university. That's why they went to the university in the first place. They enjoy that environment, and they have a very strange notion of what they want to accomplish and how they want to accomplish it vis-a-vis their startup. And generally it goes something like this. They'd like to spend a couple of hours a week doing something, participating in the startup in some manner, and then they'd like to make some money, preferably sooner rather than later. And that's all well and good, but unfortunately a couple of hours a week is not enough to drive, a butterfly out of your room. 150% of your time is required to get a startup going, which means, from my perspective, they must quit their activity with the university and spend every waking minute of their time, trying to move the startup forward. So we get to an immediate immovable object problem. So what I've concluded and have seen is it's not great to work with the professors. It's really great to work with their graduate students or their postdocs, who, if you're lucky, has both the information and the know-how and has the drive. That, of course, depends on the individual. And then the professor or professors should be relegated to board of advisors, scientific advisors, and given a small percentage of the company, which reflects the small contribution that they're going to be making in the overall area, which, by the way, they don't agree with. So, there's several interesting, what I call reality perception issues that you have to deal with, first with the universities, then with the professors, and then trying to drive or find one or more entrepreneurs, real entrepreneurs, hopefully out of the students, either a student, a graduate student, or a postdoc. And I've had success doing that, but it's always been with the student, and always with a student that was both exceptional in the technology, but also exceptional sponge from a business point of view, just a sponge, a human sponge that could just draw and learn and keep drawing and learning and becoming a better and better entrepreneur. And then you've got something.